Taking a break from post-restriction decks, I wanted to explore the possibility of EX7 decks moving forward. Because with these restrictions, the whole deck building process changes again, unless your deck is a typical archetypal deck that's in the colors of blue. And how convenient, Hexeblaumon meets these criteria. Hexeblaumon offers a lot of new support cards in the upcoming format that are going to be detrimental to a lot of other decks. With already powerful cards like paledramon, paledramon Ace already putting purple and trash-reliant decks to the Stone Ages, Hexeblaumon offers additional support cards that send it back to the Ice Age. Puns aside, per the usual discussion, this deck has not been tested and ultimately looks at data gathered from Japan's meta, along with some spins on what I've been tinkering with for my own build. With that in mind, let's talk about Hexeblaumon, the Frozen Magical Knight. The narrative of today's video is going to discuss a lot of different cards first before going through the deck profile. Largely, the focus of Hexeblaumon decks are going to focus on source stripping and stunning your opponent's board from attacking or blocking. With EX7, there are a number of tools that the game introduces that greatly impact what the deck previously was in BT5 Battle of Omni and EX3 Draconic Roar. Bulucomon, while previously serving as a way to gain more memory, now makes its debut into the spotlight as a searcher for the deck. Revealing 3 cards from the top in order to add 1 card with paledramon or Hexeblaumon in its name, and 1 card with the Ice Snow trait. Paledramon in name helps that it could be paledramon or cryspaledramon, which covers your level 4s and 5s. Hexeblaumon, who knows, could get a super ultimate form in the future. But when it comes to the Ice Snow trait, it could add itself, Snowagumon, and even Sorcerermon. Searching in archetypes has always been one of the cornerstones, and this is becoming more common for Digimon as each set progresses. Despite the strong search effect, the when attacking effect merely trashes the top Digivolution card of one of your opponent's Digimon once per turn. Snowagumon has an identical inheritable, but is a Digimon that has the newest keyword, Iceclad. And what's so great about Iceclad? The answer is everything. Iceclad is a new keyword that when your Digimon does battle outside of security, you compare the number of Digivolution sources instead of DP. So if Snowagumon has a level 2 Digimon underneath it and promotes out of the raise. If your opponent has a suspended Death-Exmon loses to Snowagumon because it has more sources. I've checked with the judge on this specific ruling, and when it comes to Iceclad facing off against Digimon with immunity or protection effects, Iceclad changes the condition of battle between Digimon as a comparison of sources, meaning if your Digimon is blocked while having Iceclad, DP and immunity do not matter as it's affecting battle. Think about it kinda like Blocker. In preliminary research, this suggests that Digimon with specialized battle protection are the only ones who can get away from Iceclad. Garurumon based Digimon? Yes. Greymon Digimon? No. You may be wondering why this effect might be so important, and the answer ultimately stems from the fact that other than Snowagumon, this deck has 2 other members who have this ability. Cryspaledramon is the other member who has this ability, and can strip 2 Digivolution cards from any Digimon. Could be 2 Digivolution sources off of 2 Digimon, could just be 1 Digimon who gets 2 sources taken out. Regardless, if there's a Digimon with no Digivolution sources, this Digimon gets to unsuspend. The only other member, of course, goes to Hexeblaumon, who when Digivolving trashes any 4 Digivolution cards of your opponent's Digimon. Then if your opponent has no Digimon with Digivolution cards, return one of their Tamers to the bottom of the deck. Additionally, any of their Digimon with as many or fewer Digivolution cards as this Digimon can't suspend. So while the old Hexeblaumon prevents your opponent's Digimon from attacking or blocking, the fact that they cannot suspend also rules out the ability for green to utilize some of their abilities, whether they're Digizorbing or suspending for immunity. Either which, not possible. One reason why I feel Hexeblaumon is going to perform extremely well in the up-and-coming meta ultimately comes from the fact that with a blue-dominated meta, this prevents decks like paledramon from fully utilizing Partition, and for armor decks, that armor source and condition of Iceclad could be huge. Because based on these rulings we've talked about so far, Shoto Kazuma could be an excellent drop into this deck as well. Though it is a green card, the fact that you can gift Blocker and Piercing to your Hexeblaumon could make it an indispensable jamming attacker that could unsuspend because of your opponent not having a Digimon with Digivolution sources, and having an Iceclad blocker on your turn. The coup de grace for this deck, of course, is going to go to paledramon Paladin Mode Ace, because not only are you stripping your opponent's Digimon's Digivolution sources, but you could also be potentially setting up for one major play in one turn. Remember, on play and when Digivolving, this Digimon trashes all Digivolution cards of all of your opponent's Digimon. Then you return all cards in yours or your opponent's trash to the bottom of the deck. If this effect returned a white level 7 Digimon, whether it be another Paladin Mode Ace, Omnimon, anything that's a level 7 white Digimon, you gain 3 memory. Running 2 isn't a terrible idea. Considering if you can return 1 from your own trash, this immediately cuts the Digivolution cost in half. But the main thing that is deadly about this card is the fact that when you attack, by returning one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources to the bottom of the deck, you unsuspend this Digimon. Meaning if your opponent has been board locked for the longest time with Hexeblaumon, this Digimon could potentially be a game finisher, assuming there isn't a bomb in security. Remember, this effect isn't once per turn. So with all these new toys in mind, what is my recommendation for the deck? Looking over Hexeblaumon, there are a wide variety of eggs you can use when it comes to playing this deck. BT14 bulucomon is insane that because you have ways to trash sources, your Digimon will typically have jamming. Hiyaruimon is the newest option when it comes to drawing cards, because you could even go first, promote out first, and get a draw 1 regardless, whether they have a Digimon out or not, assuming that Digimon has no sources. Kiaromon from BT6 is an option because you don't necessarily have to attack, but you would need to be able to trash sources. Decks like 7th Grade Demon Lords typically don't have sources, which makes this level 2 not as potent. But that's about the extent of what I'd look at for level 2s, as it's not as DP dependent with Iceclad and jamming. With your level 3s, it's no surprise you'll be running 4 bulucomons and at least 2 snowagumons. But for the last 6 slots, I went with a dead split for blocker jamming Biomon and BT14 Otamamon because I'm cheeky. At times, you may feel like attacking is going to be a problem. But with blocker Hexeblaumon and Iceclad, does your opponent really want to lose Digivolution sources and make it so that Iceclad goes online? Decisions. Level 4s give you some flexibility here as well. On one hand, you could choose to ignore lanamon altogether if you don't really care about having a hybrid for game option. It's just there as a one-up. But Gesomon from BT14 is the level 4 Digimon to hold for future play, especially against Ace Digimon decks. Remember, with so much source stripping with this deck, Gesomon can effectively eliminate any of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon that could blast Digivolve before they actually do it. While paledramon from EX3 serves as an additional tax to your opponent's Digimon when Digivolving, assuming they have no sources. New paledramon can trash 2 Digivolution cards of one of your opponent's Digimon and gift blocker and jamming until the end of your opponent's turn if they have no Digimon with Digivolution cards. Again, super simple. For level 5s, old cryspaledramon gives you a security check +1 if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards, while the newer variant has Iceclad and has inheritable piercing and security attack +1 if the Digimon has Ice Snow in the traits. Which means that even though this card does effectively work with the new Hexeblaumon, it does not with the old one. One MVP for this lineup is going to go to Miragegaogamon from BT6, because if your opponent has no Digimon with Digivolution cards in play, unsuspend this Digimon. The problem? Searching for it. Though you can add this card conventionally off of card draw effects, you won't be able to with bulucomon. Narrowing it down to the level 6s though, I have already gone over both Hexeblaumons. The next question is, what other options could you run? Honestly, blue is one of the best colors in the card game, and because of this, it has a lot of generic top ends that are really strong. Dianamon, for example, is another great level 6 Digimon that this deck could utilize, because all the effects synergize with it. When Digivolving and when attacking, for each of this Digimon's Digivolution cards, trash any one Digivolution card from one of your opponent's Digimon. Then until the end of your opponent's turn, all of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards can't suspend. Additionally, when an opponent's Digimon's Digivolution card is trashed, you unsuspend this Digimon once per turn. And while Dianamon is a great option for the deck, ultimately its compliance with cryspaledramon does not work well for it for the fact that it does not have the Ice Snow trait. And even worse, both Dianamon and Miragegaogamon's effects are mandatory effects. Meaning if you're attacking and utilizing Dianamon in later turns and trash a source, both effects to unsuspend will trigger simultaneously. Miragegaogamon is another option because of its general effect and ability to limit your opponent's resource use of the memory system. But ultimately, it falls into the same issue of not being an Ice Snow trait Digimon. But fret not, because there are more level 6 Digimon appearing in the future of the card game in the form of Ancient Megatheriumon and Skatymon, a new Liberator reveal. I've already discussed the use of Imperialdramon Paladin Mode Ace, and frankly, I don't think I would substitute it with anything because the card is just that good in the up-and-coming format. This deck largely will theoretically eliminate protection sources and even prevent Digimon from activating their partition effects. Again, the only problem is Blast Digivolution Digimon. Option card wise, I lean heavily into consistency searches for the fact that sometimes I'll want to reduce Digivolution costs before I Digivolve. Finding a blue tamer can also be huge. But for the techs and the removal cards, Ice Statue will help with removing bodies, especially those that go into security. High Speed Plug-in D is just to circumvent blocker control if it does become an obnoxious deck in the format. But there are many other options that you can utilize. And lastly, for tamers, Joe Keto when hit in security can trash any one Digivolution card of one of your opponent's Digimon. The advantage to this is that if Magnamon X players are roaming about and hit this insecurity first, you can just as easily remove that armor form trait Digimon to prevent them from activating their when Digivolving effect. Joe and Sora can also be huge because once your opponent sets a Digimon on the board, that Digimon is likely going to be locked for the remainder of the game with Hexeblaumon's prevention of suspension. Not to mention, you can keep the board relatively clean of Digivolution sources as well when you attack. The final tamer, as mentioned before, goes to Shoto Kazuma from EX7 because it's probably going to be a staple in a lot of decks moving forward as well. Generally, I'm not saying Hexeblaumon is going to be the meta deck to play. Frankly, it might not even be a deck to play if other decks can just outspeed it. But based on the theory and other options, what cards are you going to play, and why? Let me know your thoughts, as this week is going to take a deep dive into other elements of discussion. Most powerful cards, best removal, and more. This is DIGI-PANDA, logging out.